Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We're on episode 12 of Violet Evergarden. This is the penultimate episode of the season. So we still have episode 13, which is the series finale, and then we still have two movies after this, two feature-length movies, might I add. So I'm pretty excited about that, but I've been taking weeks off between episodes because I need a week. It's like watching them within days of each other. It's like, do you want to cry? And it's just so sad. But episode 7 and episode 10 really gutted me. But episode 11 was pretty bad too. So I don't know, y'all, what to expect out of this. I mean, at this point, the only people that Violet really haven't confronted, Violet hasn't wrote the letter to the Major, and I'm curious to know if we are going to get that in this season, in this series, or if they're saving that for the movie, perhaps. And then there is Diethard, however you want to say his name, Gilbert's brother, and I'm like, will she write a letter to him? Because that would be kind of awkward and odd, but at the same time, it feels like if she doesn't write a letter to Diethard, she at least needs to talk to him. They need to at least have a conversation, which might be hard because Gilbert's brother, he doesn't really seem like a talker, or not an honest talker, like someone that's going to break down and have an honest, genuine conversation. But maybe that'll happen because maybe he's grieving too his brother's loss and he needs somebody to talk to about it. And what better person to talk to than the person that loved your brother just as much as you did? And explaining what that emotion is. So yeah, I honestly don't know. Ever since episode 10, I have not known what to expect out of this series. I've had no clue. And last episode was a surprise of her going on the battlefront and getting the letter for Aiden written. So I don't know what we're going to do from here, because each episode since episode 10 has been, episode 7 kind of ended, open, closed book with closure. Episode 8 and 9 kind of went together, but episode 9 ended with closure. And then episode 10 and 11 each had closure. They were all standalone stories. So the thread has been Violet. The thread through with all of these episodes in this series has been Violet and her journey. That's been the thread that we follow. And whatever happens to Violet has happened in a pretty episodic format. So I don't know what to expect. I don't know how they're going to end the series, and the fact they do two movies afterwards. I don't know if the movies are going to be prequels, sequels, however we're going to do it. But I am excited that we still got a little ways left. We're in the final month of Violet, and I've really liked this series a lot, but my tear ducts might be happy when it's over, because I've never cried this much watching anything. Not just anime, shows in general. I don't normally cry. I've said that. And in here I've been sobbing like a mess for half this season. I had to get some water because I have a feeling I'm going to need it to replenish myself. So yeah, let's just dive into this, shall we? And just see what happens. What could go wrong? But in any case, we are going to start episode 12 of Violet Evergarden here in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Oh my gosh. We gotta go back through that. Oh my gosh. I've never wanted to just like instantly go into the next episode. I'm like, no, you can't in there. But, damn it. No. Come on. Oh man. Here's the thing. A lot of you have said that Gilbert's brother is like the most despised character in this series. I've never hated him. He's awful. And him saying that she's a tool and everything, he's an asshole. Very much so. And I've never hated his character, but I haven't, his character is pretty despicable in terms of how he's treated Violet. Very despicable. But ever since she saw him back at the end of episode 6, episode 5, way back then, ever since, I think it was episode 5, ever since the end of that episode, I have wanted, and ever since episode 7 and 8 and 9 came out, I've wanted her to talk to him. Because, as it's established here, he's grieving too. He may be an asshole, but that doesn't mean he didn't love his brother. That's the thing about it. Just because he's a jerk doesn't mean that he's not capable of loving people. That's been kind of the whole point of this whole episode and the episodes before it, establishing that, yeah, both sides are human and they both have things that they're fighting for that they believe in, and we can characterize them as villains and heroes and everything. But like the guy, the brigadier general said here, he's like, they have their own reasons for why they're doing it. It may not be, it may not morally align with what you believe. Like, I'm like, I still probably wouldn't start a war, but you at least understand where he's coming from, even if you don't agree with it. And he's still human at the end of the day. That's the problem. When Violet says she doesn't kill anyone anymore, she's like, you're all human. I'm tired of killing people. I'm tired of ending lives and ending people's happy days and ending people. She's like, I'm tired of having to write letters to these dead people because they've died. She's like, I'm tired of it. And so, and you can't blame her. But Gilbert's brother, in that confrontation, that's like, I wanted them to finally talk, and they finally do. And it's like, you can tell he has all this pent up hatred for her because he thinks that, one, he's like, why couldn't you protect Gilbert? It's almost like he's like, I gave you to him to protect him and you couldn't do it. And he's also like, why did he have faith in you? Why did he care for you? What? And you can tell the brother has like a sense of his own guilt, his own feelings, like he's grieving because, he didn't get to see his brother before he died. He didn't get to talk to him before he died. He found out about it and he assumed he'd be safe with Violet. And it's just, you get where the brother's coming from. And he's just so racked with sadness and anger and guilt and all these emotions, just like Violet is. And oh my gosh, it's just this episode. This episode was just such a build up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and we still have the other episode to go. In the movies. So yeah, I've told y'all that I haven't really cared about like the political aspects about this show because it all seems superfluous in the grand scheme of the show, because at the end of the day, they're all humans. Even when they're fighting amongst each other, they're all humans. They all have their own sense of validation and reasons for why they're fighting. But at the end of the day, Violet's coming through being like, look, I'm tired of people dying. Let's just stop it. And so the Brigadier General's leading this anti-peace force. And God, the animation in this episode, the sunlight filtering in the room of these generals all sitting here, it's like, Kiwani, just take all my money. Seriously. But, oh my gosh. It's just so good. So they established that they've got the red blocks are the Brigadier General and his group, and they're all small forces surrounding these bigger forces, and just the idea that they could cause conflict. And so the Navy Brigadier, I want to see how he says his name. I'm going to go back and see how they say his name. Diethard. Okay, it is Diethard. Good, it's Diethard. Glad we established that. So yeah, and his hair growing out. I almost want him to cut it by the end of this series. I almost want him to chop it off by the end of the series because it's been growing out this whole time. But I doubt he'll do that. But his eyes are so beautiful, but they're not. Again, it's such a contrast because Gilbert has the warm, inviting, lush green eyes, and Diethard's are like a cold, vibrant, harsh, kind of like gem-like quality. And then, yeah, they establish, like, why come to the Navy, not the Army? But they talk about how the Army's been disbanded with everything going on. And this peace treaty signing is important. It's going to affect everybody's future. And how they want to be prepared for unexpected situations. And he has the manpower, and they need the manpower. And the Army Special Forces have been disbanded, and they're shorthanded. Yeah, and your unit's still fully operational. And so then, of course, the Navy's suited for going up through boat and all of that. And I like that Diethard can instantly see what's going on. He like Violet, him and Violet, not so different in terms of military prowess. And he's like, with Gilbert gone, you want to push the trouble on his older brother instead. And they all get offended at that. They're like, excuse you, sir. But he's like, yeah, no. So, man, I love the idea that Violet's made a friend. She's made a friend with this pilot that he's flying her over, seeing everything. And it makes so much sense for Violet, too, because she has a military mindset that she's kind of mapping out the area and seeing where the lay of the land and how everything is. You can just tell that. But Catalia and Benedict, dude, Benedict with them lace-up pants. Boy, he'll put a cardigan and a sweater on, but he ain't changing out them pants. He's gonna be fashionable on this road trip to the peace treaty signing. It's like, okay. And Catalia, I love her coat. But, so Diethard said something about her, and I missed it because I was so surprised that he was on the ship with them. Yeah, and so all the special envoy, I wonder if they already killed him, though. I think they might have already killed him to take part in the peace treaty exchange. Wonder if Violet will replace him. Sure, why not? I really thought when we had this scene of Catalia and Benedict next to each other, I at first when this series started, I was kind of shipping Catalia and Hodgins, but now I'm kind of leaning more towards Benedict and Catalia. I don't know. They gave each other looks this episode that I was like, are you two gonna get together? I don't know. She seemed like she was about to say something to him, and then he shows up. And then, well, the postal dude shows up, and of course Catalia is beautiful, so he's like blushing around her. And she's like, okay. And of course, Kiwani let us animate water ocean level. Like, we're at this point. There has to be a body of water. It's contractually obligated. There's a body of water in every Kiwani animation episode so that you know. Just so you know. But yeah, so we'll have you and the special envoy board a special train, which will be waiting for you there. And we'll take you part of the way by ship for your safety. And I like that she holds her hair from like getting in the wind. It's a very common thing to do. And then, of course, the boy's like, oh my gosh. And she said, didn't the president of your company come here with you? Ah, okay. So he was thinking about, where's Hodgins? Because why isn't Hodgins there? Interesting. I just love that Diethard has the little bow tying his hair together, like in the braid. Like you could have just had a tie, but no, the bow is much more fashionable. Retiring from service as soon as the war ended. What a disgrace. So he was talking about Hodgins. He was talking about Hodgins, not her. Interesting. And she, of course, defends him. She's like, who do you think you are? And then she's like, oh, you're Violet's Major's brother. That's the name of Violet's Major. And I like that he kind of like, he's like, Violet's Major? Really? I'm his older brother. And she's like, oh, you're not nearly as hot as she made out to be. She just has that look on her face like, you know, Violet's really into your brother, so maybe he's hotter. She just had that look on her face, you know? And then, of course, he leaves them. Yeah. And they got to ensure the signing ceremony is a success and watch over them. And so you're the only civilian doll. So she's there for part of the signing as a civilian. Okay. And then Benedict's with her. And then, yeah. If you're asking about Violet, she won't be coming this time. Surprise. And that gets Catalina's attention that, is she still working as a doll? That's sorry excuse for a human being. He's such an asshole. But I'm like, at this point, now that you know what you know about him, it's like, yeah, he's an asshole and he shouldn't have been saying those mean things about her. And I'm glad that Catalina and Benedict stuck up for her. And I like that Benedict's like, yeah, she may be flawed, but she's trying to do her best. It's like, yeah. There are even people she saved with her letters. And then it's like, Diethard, just embrace the Care Bear stare and let Violet write you a letter and heal your wounds. Just let her write you a damn letter. I just want that. At this point, I want her to write a letter to the Major, and I want her to write a letter to Diethard. I want her to be able to, for him to vocalize. I just want it. I want there to be closure between them, and I want it to come full circle. I want her and him to talk. Because here's the thing about it all. Who loved Gilbert the most in his life outside of his parents? Diethard and Violet. They loved him the most. It was his brother and, you know, you could call Violet whatever you want, like his faux sister, his lover, whatever. They loved him clearly the most. And so who better? It's like a therapy. I want them both to have like a therapy session where they talk to each other and reminisce about him and get to some kind of level. And, damn. So, Merkulov, the Brigadier General. I'll probably just call him Brigadier General Merkulov. But, yeah. So, the POW camp rescued Isidore. So Isidore got killed in this episode, and Isidore was the one that killed Aiden. Humiliation. So yeah, that's the thing. The idea that, you know, it's touching on the fact that in a war, neither side wants to lose. You don't enter a war to lose, to want to lose. Both sides want to win because they have their own stake in it, and their own perspective is being upheld. And so when they lost that battle, he touches on a pretty real point of what's historically happened in wars, that usually the losing side, when they go home, it's not good. I mean, you can look at World War I, you can look at Vietnam, you can look at Civil War, you can look at pretty much any war anywhere in history, and the losing side, there's always turmoil and chaos for them when it's over, because you didn't get what you wanted, and then you've had all these casualties, and there's been this collateral damage, and there's this economic impact and everything. And so the brigadier general kind of sums it up for Violet. He's like, you know, he kind of sums it up to like how the people were treated ethically when they returned, like how they were treated and how they were seen. But there's so much else that could be said with that. So yeah, you get where they're coming from. I don't agree with it for them to try to start another war. And we'll get to that. We'll talk about that a little bit more, of his idea of the war not ending, and his and Violet's conversation. Yeah. So their idea is to destroy the transportation, because that's the symbol of peace between the North and the South. Yep. And I like the multiple perspectives we get in this. Like the brigadier general, he views the railroad as just a means for his country to continue to be subjugated by another. That's how he views the railroad. It's not a symbol of peace. He views it as oppression. And the pilot is like, it brings peace to the North and South and allows my business to flourish and allows us to flourish. So it's so fascinating that something that is just an object that can have connotations that are different for different groups of people. It's so fascinating. And I love that this episode touches on that everybody has their own view of what this situation is bringing. And it's just like they're all fighting for what they believe in and for their own morals. I thought the thing with Hodgins at the train station, seeing them off and seeing the little girl run up to his dad, and you instantly saw like his love for Violet is parental. Definitely. I think that Gilbert left him with Violet to take care of her. And I feel like Hodgins views her almost like a child, like from episode 1, like as a child that he's adopted, like his daughter. I feel like that's how Hodgins views her. And if Hodgins is her adopted dad, I'm all for it. Sure. I hope she'll be back soon. Yeah. Ugh. And I like that Diethard this whole time has been trying to plan and think things out. Like Diethard isn't actively sitting there stewing and hating on Violet the whole time. He's got more important fish to fry. He's trying to plan stuff out. But yeah, you get to that part where they're flying overhead and she looks over and sees Intense. And she sees it, and that's where Gilbert and her were at when she last saw him. It's Yep. And then they notice all the explosions, and she goes down to get on the train. And I love that he's in the middle of the order, and he sees her run by, and he's like, and Diethard's like, oh my God, there she is. Why is she here? And then Violet's like, I gotta catch up with you and watch over you guys because there's gonna be an attack. Things are going on. There were signs of explosions nearby. I'm gonna go with you. And Catalina and Benedict are like, well, you should stay behind. And I'm like, no, she's your best bet to stay alive on this train. Why would you send her away? And then, yeah, what the hell are you doing here? And then I like she has no, Violet, bless her heart, she has no, for everything that Diethard has done to her, for everything that he has said to her and how awful he's treated her and him just being a trash king to her, for everything that's happened, she has not once shown, in the present timeline here, shown anger or rage or fury at him. Like, she's not blamed him for anything. And that's amazing because he blames her for so much and she doesn't blame him for a thing. She's just like, we have bigger fish to fry. We've got more important things. We got to keep people safe. And she's like, I happen to see you on my way back from my mission in Citragel. And that's the thing. in Citrogal, my mission. She refers to it in military terms. She doesn't say my trip to Citrogal to write the letter. She says my mission. And Diethard is like, did you just say Citrogal? And she's like, during my mission, I saw remnants of the army. And he gets very frustrated. And he's like, are you sure? And he's like, we need to talk about this right now. And then Cataleya's like, no, this guy hates your guts. You shouldn't talk to him. It's not going to end well. And luckily for us, Violet has matured emotionally where she can handle him. She can handle Diethard. She's got this, you know. And I like that she and him talk military talk and like plan stuff out. And oh my gosh, I love this episode so much. And they're just making their plan and seeing what they need to do next. And he tries to get her off the train too. He tries to get her off the train, not because she's not, because here's the thing, that was a personal choice. That was a personal agenda, that decision to get her off the train, because Violet knows she's best needed there on the train because she can help keep them safe. Cataleya doesn't want her to be on the train for personal reasons because she doesn't want Violet to get hurt. That's that side of it. Diethard is kind of the opposite. He doesn't want her on the train because he feels enraged at her right now and hates her guts and doesn't want to get distracted during the mission. So, two different sides of the same coin. They both want her off the train for different reasons, but they're connected. And here's the thing about her asking him for orders. He keeps saying, are you a tool that can only follow orders? That's not it. She's showing him respect in this moment, being like, you're the senior official. I'm being respectful to you and asking you to tell me what to do because you have the higher rank. It's not that she needs orders. She's wanting them. She's wanting them. Yeah. Oh, that shadow. There's so many good... Diethard, for much of an asshole as he is and how awful he is, they animate him so well. They animate him so well in this episode. Like the shadows covering half of his face, but the light is still in his eyes. And then she says, no, I'm not. And it's taking all she has to say no. She says, not anymore. And then he sees the brooch that has the color of his brother's eyes. And you can tell in that moment that he gets what it means. Like, even if he doesn't directly know, he senses what it means, or that it reminds him, if anything, of his brother. And then you could just see how sad he is. He's like, get out of my sight, because he doesn't want to see it and be reminded of Gilbert, because he's grieving. This episode. Because it's just showing how much Diethard has had to go through the same way as her. Not gone through the same thing, but emotionally, he's suffering from the same lack of having his brother in his life. He's suffering too. So it's just, And then I love that. Here's why I wanted them to work together this whole time, because the whole time during this episode, Diethard's planning out the mission on the map, so is Violet. They're both reaching the same conclusions. They both are on the same page. It's like, I just want them to work together. And I want them to sit down and I want her to write him a letter. I'm so dead set on it. I'm going to be so sad if that doesn't happen, but I want it so badly. And then, yeah, they separate the cars to get most of the troops away from him. So it's just Diethard and Cataleya and Benedict and Violet and the envoy. I want to say the envoy is dead, probably. I love this scene, though, where he opens up the door and she's there and he has the gun. And she's, like, trying to tell him what the situation is. And yeah, it's just them. And he's like, I'll go stop the train. You stay and protect the people inside. And she's like, okay, got it. And then he goes back to it. And he's like, you just want orders. And she's like, no, I'm just being nice, damn it. I love that she's like, no, I don't just want orders. She's like, I'm being respectful to you, damn it. And letting you make the call because you're the senior official. And he keeps saying she's just a tool. If I ordered you to slaughter the enemy, you wouldn't hesitate to kill them, right? And she says, I will not kill anyone. I do not need a weapon. And then if you're not a tool, then what are you? Because that's the crux of it, right? Because it's easy to pin blame on her And it's easy to use her as a scapegoat for your brother's death if she's not a human, right? It's easy for something inanimate. You know, if you cut your hand on a knife on accident, you can blame the knife and you don't feel bad at all for doing so because the knife doesn't have emotions. It doesn't have a conscience or a soul, right? It's an inanimate object. It's just an object. It's a tool, right? And if you hurt yourself with it, you can blame it on the tool and no harm, no foul, right? And that I feel that's what Diethard wants to do. He wants to make Violet a tool and make her out in his mind that she's not human so that she can pin all of his frustrations on her and say, my brother's dead because of you. And you can't argue it because you're a tool, right? You just follow orders and just do whatever someone tells you to. You don't have your own conscience, whatever. You don't have your own emotions, whatever. That's what he wants to do. But the more he's around her in this episode and the more she's like, no, the more he realizes that she's not a tool. She is human. She is flesh and blood. She does have her own consciousness and emotions. And that just makes the whole situation more complicated. And I think that's Diethard's had in his mindset this whole time that things don't have to be complicated. I can just blame this girl and that's it. And then, yeah, the one guy, Isidore, he was the guy that killed Aiden. And he's awful, too. He's just an asshole. He makes a big deal about killing Aiden. And she's like, you can tell she's trying to hold back. She's trying not to kill him. And she's like, nope, and she just breaks the knife. I love it. She's like, I'm just knock y'all out. But, yeah, it's great. And I love that Diethard is like going up the side of the train. The battle doll. They all call her the battle doll in this. The Brigadier General calls her the battle doll, and Diethard calls her a battle doll too, which is like, reminds me of like Alita. That's what I kept thinking of when they were saying battle doll. I'm like, that's kind of like Alita. Alita's a good parallel to this in a way. Alita Battle Angel. I guess that's a good example that goes with this. And so, yeah, here's the conversation between the Brigadier, and this brings so much perspective into all this. She's like, you're trying to start a war. And he's like, do you think the war is over? And she's like, it seems like you know what I'm talking. He says, it seems like you know what I'm talking about. You and I both have memories of violence burned into us like scars. And it's like that burning feeling. It's going back to the idea that it's burning. And the Brigadier General's like, I'm burning too. And this will never be over. We'll never get over this. But Violet, we get that montage of all the people dying and crying and her delivering the letters. And she's like, but it can be over. She's like, but you can move on. And she has Spencer as an example too. And the Brigadier General just doesn't see a life without war because he's just burning so much that he just can't see an end in sight. And she's like, no, there is an end. It can be over. And yeah, she's like, the war's ended. The war has ended in the real world. That's the thing that she says. She's like, in reality, the war is over. Like, it's just between us now. This is just, we're just pretending. And then he says, it has not. I love that. He's like, we fought dreaming for the war to end, waiting for the glory that was promised to both the living and the dead. But what happened in reality? And then he says, what happened in reality is that our leaders do whatever they're told, and the soldiers who risked their lives to protect people were scorned and blamed for everything and had stones cast against them. He's like, so we were betrayed and abandoned by everything. Which, it's you get it. You get where he's coming from. But Violet's right. She's like, yeah, you can think that, and you're not wrong to think that. But the reality is that life is moving forward. It is moving on, and we can't dwell on the past. We've got to move forward with it. And it's like she's come full circle and like moving on from Gilbert and everything. I think in that moment she's moved. In this episode, I feel like she has moved forward knowing that Gilbert's dead and accepting that and saying the reality is we have to keep going and find a way to move forward in the world and not keep burning. We've got to put the fire out. Like that seemed like this episode is like the acceptance stage of the 5 stages of grieving. And Diethard's way back in like step 1. But yeah, her trying to tell him that. And then it just doesn't get through to them. And she just looks so heartbroken. And she grabs the brooch. I want Diethard to save that brooch. I'm like, if she lost that brooch, she says she doesn't want to kill anybody else. And I love that brooch, it almost looks like an eye opening up. Like, it almost looks like an eye opening up, and that's when she looks up and sees all of them. Oh, that animation's so good. I love it. This action scene, it's so... But then she got slashed by the bayonet. Ah! And they try to shoot her. I'm like, girl. Girl. Ugh. And that's when he cuts the brooch off. And he finds it. But I'm like, what ends up happening to it? Does Diethard get it? Did she get it? I don't know. And then, yeah, it looks like he's going to chop her head off. Ah! And then that's the last thing she looks at. And it's like the last thing she wants to see is the Major's face before she dies. And I kept saying in that moment, when she says I'm like, are you going to say that you loved him? Is that what you're going to say? Were you going to say I loved him? And then, yeah, and just as he's about to kill her, that's when Diethard, like, shoots the gun off, and then there's that tunnel. Ah! And she thought it was the Major. She thought it was the Major, but it was Diethard instead. And then, yeah, he's like, what are you doing? And so, yeah, we don't know what happened with the brooch, damn it. He knocked him off the train, but I'm like, ah! And then Diethard's like, screw you all. But him grabbing her. And then this is where it is. This is where the conversation, it's all been leading up to this. Like, I've been wanting them to have this conversation. Yeah, because she really thought it was Gilbert. She said Captain Diethard, so she thought it was Gilbert at first. He's like, you can't even protect yourself. So how did you expect to do this without killing people? My brother gave his life to protect someone like you. That's the thing. He's like, he knows, I'm sure, from Hodgins. That's probably why Hodgins didn't go, because Hodgins did not want to have to talk to Diethard, probably, because Hodgins was one of Gilbert's really good friends. He's like, I don't want to talk to his brother because it's not going to end well. So, but yeah, I'm sure that Diethard knows that Gilbert protected Violet. And she's like, I don't want to kill anymore. The Major's orders were to live, not to kill. And he says, what use is a battle doll that will no longer kill? And he just shoves her down. That's why you weren't able to protect Gilbert. You killed Gil. And then he says Gil, like using his brother's like kid name. And that's why you should die too. Hurry up and die. It's so sad. It's like it's like Diethard is so angry and sad that his brother died, and he doesn't understand why he had to die, because Violet was there. And he's like, if you followed orders to protect him, why didn't you? And that's the whole thing, because she's human. Because she's not a tool. Because she's a person. And people are flawed, and they're not invincible. And then that's when it all comes out. He's like, my brother died, and I'm sad about it, and I'm angry about it, and I'm using you as a scapegoat to put all my frustrations on, because you're not supposed to be human, but you are now, so I'm confused. Right? And then I love that. She's like, even so, she's like, you can tell me to die, whatever. You're not the Major, and the Major ordered me to live. So... And then it's when she says, she's like, I wanted to protect him. And she comes out with it too. And steps towards him. She's like, I wanted to protect him. I wanted to protect him too. And then they both are just staring at each other. And that's when the Brigadier General and then Isidore is gonna... Oh, and then here's the thing. She was in front of him. She was standing right in front of him, and he pushed her aside to shoot Isidore. Diethard did. So he technically saved her. And then vice versa, she stands in front of him and protects him and ricochets the bomb off of her hand. Yep. Oh my gosh. And it looks like it did some damage to it. And she can still see it. Oh my god. Oh my gosh, you guys. Ah. So the Brigadier General's not dead, so maybe he still has the brooch. I don't want her to lose the brooch. I guess they can go back and find it. I just want... I love at the end of this all that Diethard saved her, she saved him. They both are sad. They're both angry. They both aren't happy that Gilbert's dead. I just want them to sit down and grieve together. And I know that they ain't ever gonna hug each other. I'm not gonna hug it out, I'm sure. But I just want them to sit down and grieve. I want Diethard to be able to cry and grieve over his brother. Because it seems like his anger and frustration is just boiling over. And he just needs to let it out. He needs to do like Violet and just let it out. I just want her to sit there and like hold his hand and cry with him. Because at the end of the day, they're both the two people that loved him the most. And they're the two people that need to grieve him together. And then move forward from it. I'm like, ugh. Mm-hmm. I really love this episode. This is one of my favorites of the whole series. I love it because it's given me... I've wanted Diethard and her to have a conversation since the start of this series. Like, since we figured out that Gilbert may be dead. So, obviously, I like this episode a lot. But I'm curious. I mean, I'm sure they're going to stop the Brigadier General because most of those forces have been taken out at this point. But the question is how? Is she going to get the brooch back? Are her and Diethard going to have a conversation? Please let them have a conversation. and then where we go to from here. Oh my gosh. And the next episode's the end of the series. So, cool beans. Oh man, this episode was really good. But I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. What you all thought of this episode. It's pretty good stuff. So... in the meantime, I can't believe the last episode is next week. And then we still have 2 movies, so we still got a little ways. But I really want to watch the next episode. I may not be able to wait a week this time. This wasn't a sad, sappy cry episode. This was like things getting done. So I may not wait a week to watch this and react to it and edit it because I really want to know what happens. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 13 of Violet Evergarden. Bye.